In the heart of a quiet village surrounded by towering trees and flowing rivers, there lived a woman named Aminata. Her life wasn't marked by fame or fortune, but by a deep sense of connection to her land, family, and traditions. Aminata was a farmer, tending to fields of millet and maize. Every morning, as the first light of dawn filtered through the trees, she would wake up to start her day. The village was a peaceful place, where the air was fresh and the rhythm of life was slow. The sun would climb high in the sky, casting its golden glow on the thatched roofs of the huts, and the sounds of children's laughter would echo through the dirt paths. Aminata's home was small, a simple mud brick structure with a thatched roof. It was tucked on the edge of the village, next to a wide river that supplied water for their crops and cattle. Though her house was humble, it was a place of warmth and love. Aminata's husband, Kwame, was a craftsman who worked with metal, shaping tools, and everyday items for the village. Together, they had 2 children, Amma, their 7-year-old daughter, and Kwame Jr., their 3-year-old son. Family was the foundation of Aminata's world, and she worked tirelessly to ensure her family had everything they needed. Life wasn't easy, but it was filled with purpose. Despite their modest life, Aminata was never lonely. Her best friend, Binta, lived nearby. Binta was more than a friend, she was a sister, a confidant, and someone Aminata trusted with her deepest thoughts. The 2 women had grown up together, and their families shared many moments of joy and hardship. But as the years passed, things began to change. Aminata noticed Binta's jealousy creeping in, though it was never spoken aloud. Small disputes over trivial matters, like who had the best goats or whose crops were growing faster, began to spark tension between them. At first, Aminata ignored these small signs, but it was becoming clear that Binta's feelings were shifting. Little did Aminata know, this growing strain in their friendship would soon lead to a tragedy that would change her life forever. It all started with a disagreement that would spiral out of control, and Aminata had no idea what was coming next. The harmony she had worked so hard to maintain was about to shatter, and her world would never be the same again. The conflict began to take its toll. Aminata's relationship with Kwame became strained as well. He didn't understand why she couldn't let go of the situation, why she was holding on so tightly to something that seemed so small. "You've known Binta for so long, Aminata," he would say. "Why let one disagreement come between you?" But Aminata couldn't explain it. This wasn't just about land, it was about trust, about betrayal. And it hurt deeply. As word of the conflict spread through the village, others began to take sides. Some of the villagers sided with Aminata, agreeing that Binta had overstepped. Others, however, saw the situation differently. They believed that Binta had every right to use the land she had planted on, especially since it was a small patch. Gossip began to spread, and whispers of Aminata's ownership of the land became a topic of discussion in every corner of the village. The mounting pressure only fueled Aminata's sense of injustice. It wasn't just about the land anymore, it was about how the village viewed her, about how her friend had betrayed her trust. Aminata began to distance herself from others, feeling misunderstood and isolated. She would no longer visit the market with a smile, and her interactions with her neighbors grew curt. The community, once a place of belonging and unity, now felt foreign to her. As the days turned to weeks, Aminata realized that the conflict had become a chasm between her and everything she held dear. It wasn't simply about land or crops, it was a matter of who she could trust, who stood by her when everything seemed to fall apart. And with every passing day, the distance between Aminata and Binta seemed impossible to bridge. As the days passed, the tension between Aminata and Binta grew unbearable. What started as small misunderstandings over land quickly escalated into something far more personal. Aminata could feel the change in their relationship, the warmth that once existed between them now replaced by a coldness that seemed to linger in the air whenever they spoke. The bond they had built over the years was crumbling, piece by piece, and Aminata wasn't sure how to stop it. At first, Aminata tried to ignore the tension, convincing herself that it was just a phase. Maybe Binta was under stress or had personal issues that were making her act out. But the small disputes only grew larger. The land issue wasn't resolved, and every time Aminata thought she could put it behind her, Binta found a way to bring it up again, as if the small encroachments on Aminata's farm were a sign of something bigger, something more sinister. Aminata's frustration grew with each passing day. The long hours in the field seemed to stretch longer, as her thoughts constantly drifted back to the conflict with Binta. Her once peaceful work in the garden now felt like a battle, every seed planted, every row of crops, a silent war. The peaceful rhythm of farm life had been disrupted, and Aminata didn't know how to reclaim it. The situation also began to affect her relationship with Kwame. He had always been her rock, the one person she could turn to in moments of doubt. But as the weeks passed, he grew frustrated with Aminata's refusal to let go of the dispute. "You're letting this consume you, Aminata," Kwame said one evening, his voice tinged with exhaustion. "You can't keep holding on to something that's not worth it. The whole village is talking about it." Aminata wanted to explain, to make Kwame understand how much this hurt. It wasn't just about land, it was about the years of friendship they had shared, about the trust that seemed to have been broken in the most painful way. But she couldn't put it into words, and instead, silence stretched between them. She knew he was right in some ways, but the anger that bubbled up inside her couldn't be silenced. She had worked too hard for her farm, for the life she had built, and she wasn't ready to let someone take that from her, especially not Binta, someone she had trusted her whole life. As the conflict festered, it spilled over into the community. The gossip started small but soon grew into something larger, like a wildfire spreading through the village. The villagers whispered about Aminata's land, about Binta's actions, and about how the two women were no longer speaking to each other. The quiet unity that had once bound the village together was now fractured, with everyone choosing sides. Some sided with Aminata, believing that Binta was in the wrong, while others took Binta's side, feeling that Aminata was being overly possessive. The once peaceful community was now divided, with no room for neutrality. Aminata's pride in her farm, in her hard work, became a point of contention. The whispers of her ownership of the land, the claims that she was hoarding it, began to circulate. Aminata's every move was watched, her every action scrutinized. She had never cared about what others thought, but now, the weight of their judgment was becoming impossible to ignore. It felt as though the entire village was turning against her, questioning her motives and her right to the land she had worked so hard for. The stress of it all began to affect Aminata's health. She stopped sleeping well, the anxiety of the ongoing conflict gnawing at her every night. Her once vibrant eyes were now tired, and her shoulders bore the weight of a burden she couldn't seem to escape. The pressure from the community, from Kwame, and from Binta was mounting, and Aminata felt trapped. She had always believed in the strength of community, in the idea that a village should support one another in times of hardship. But now, the village seemed to be a place of judgment, of division. The support she had once taken for granted was now nowhere to be found. She felt as though she was facing this battle alone, even though she had people around her. The isolation was suffocating. The more Aminata tried to reach out to the community, to explain her side of the story, the more the divide seemed to grow. It felt as if everyone had already made up their minds. There was no room for discussion, no space for understanding. The situation had gone beyond a simple disagreement about land. It had become a test of loyalty, a challenge to the very fabric of her relationships. Kwame's frustration reached a boiling point one afternoon. "This isn't just about you and Binta anymore," he said sharply, his words cutting deeper than she expected. "It's about all of us. We're all being pulled into this mess. The community is falling apart because of this, Aminata." Aminata felt the sting of his words, but she couldn't deny their truth. The conflict had started small, but it was now tearing everything she had known apart. The village, her relationships, her own peace of mind, all of it was at risk. As the tension continued to rise, Aminata was left wondering if there was any way to resolve the conflict or if it had already gone too far to fix. The tension reached its breaking point on a hot afternoon when Aminata and Binta found themselves face to face in the middle of the village. The entire community had gathered for a local meeting, and as always, whispers and stares followed them both. This time, however, there was no avoiding the confrontation. Aminata could feel the weight of the moment, the eyes of everyone around them fixed on the two women who had once been close. Binta stood across from her, her arms crossed, her face hardened with anger. Aminata had never seen her so fierce, so determined. It was as if everything they had once shared had vanished, leaving nothing but resentment and pride. "Aminata, I'm done with this," Binta said, her voice sharp, cutting through the heat of the afternoon. "You've made it clear that you don't trust me anymore. You've let this land tear us apart. But I won't stand here and pretend like this isn't happening." Aminata's heart pounded in her chest. She had never been one to back down, but the words felt like daggers, each one aimed at her core. "I trusted you, Binta," she said quietly. "You were my friend. This land is mine, but it was never about ownership. It was about us, about the bond we shared. And now it feels like you want to take everything from me." Binta's eyes flickered with something, anger, guilt, or perhaps a mix of both. "You think I want to take something from you?" she asked incredulously. "I've been living in your shadow for too long, Aminata. I've worked just as hard, if not harder, and yet you act like I'm trying to steal from you." The crowd around them murmured, the tension rising as the two women exchanged heated words. Aminata could feel the eyes of the village on her, waiting for a resolution, for someone to break the deadlock. But in that moment, Aminata realized something that she had been too afraid to admit for so long. She wasn't just angry at Binta for what had happened over the land. She was angry because she felt betrayed, because the friendship they once had been shattered by something neither of them had been able to control. The land wasn't the issue, it was their bond, their history, that had been broken, and neither of them had known how to repair it. "I'm sorry," Aminata said, her voice trembling with emotion. "I should have listened. I shouldn't have let things get this far." Binta's expression softened, her arms uncrossing. For a moment, it seemed as though she might speak, but the words caught in her throat. The crowd was still watching, but it felt as though time had slowed, and only the two of them remained in the world. The silence between them grew heavy, thick with the weight of everything unsaid. "I didn't mean to hurt you, Aminata," Binta whispered. "But I didn't know how to tell you that I felt left behind. It wasn't just about the land. It was about feeling invisible, feeling like my hard work didn't matter." Aminata's heart softened at Binta's words. She had never understood the pressure Binta had been under, the weight of trying to be seen in a world that always looked at Aminata first. Slowly, Aminata stepped forward, closing the space between them. "I never saw it that way," she said, her voice filled with regret. "I was so caught up in my own world that I didn't realize how you were feeling. But I see it now." For the first time in weeks, there was a flicker of understanding between them. The tension in the air began to ease, and the crowd, who had been waiting for a fight, fell silent. There would be no dramatic resolution, no easy answers. But in that moment, both women realized that the true conflict wasn't over land, it was over the misunderstanding of their friendship, and the fear of losing what they had built together. Binta reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and Aminata took it without hesitation. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was enough. As the weight of the confrontation lifted, both women knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time in a long while, they felt as though they could rebuild, piece by piece, the trust and bond they had once shared. With each passing day, Jabari's need for answers grows stronger. He starts thinking about taking matters into his own hands, to find a way to help his children without causing harm. The situation has reached a point where Jabari knows he must make a choice, even if it means stepping into uncomfortable territory for the sake of his family. After days of feeling torn and uncertain, Jabari decides he can no longer ignore the situation. Early one morning, he heads to the school, determined to find answers directly. As he walks into the schoolyard, he sees teachers and students preparing for the day. He spots the head teacher, a stern but fair woman named Mumbai, who has been with the school for many years. Jabari respectfully approaches Mumbai, sharing his concerns as both a parent and a member of the village. He explains how he's noticed changes in his children, and he questions if something in the curriculum or teaching style could be causing them to feel disconnected from their family values. Mumbai listens carefully, surprised but open to his concerns. She explains that the school's role is to prepare the children for a broader world while still respecting their roots. Other parents, who have been feeling the same tension, start to gather around. Some share their own experiences, and soon the discussion grows, with several parents expressing their worries about the balance between modern education and traditional values. Mumbai understands their concerns and admits that, in their effort to expose the children to different perspectives, they may not have fully considered the effects on family traditions. At this moment, Jabari takes a stand and suggests that the school and parents work together to bridge the gap. He proposes regular discussions between teachers and parents to ensure that what the children learn in school doesn't conflict with their upbringing at home. Jabari's suggestion is met with nods of agreement, as both parents and teachers realize the importance of unity in shaping the children's futures. Mumbai, moved by Jabari's thoughtful approach, agrees to organize these meetings, making sure parents feel involved and respected in their children's education. She acknowledges that school is just one part of a child's learning and that family values should be supported, not replaced. Jabari's decision to approach the issue directly and with respect has brought clarity to a situation that felt overwhelming. The parents and teachers now see that by working together, they can create a supportive environment for the children, one that honors their heritage while also preparing them for the future. The changes brought by Jabari's proposal soon became evident. Parents and teachers, who had once been unsure of how to balance modern education with traditional values, now worked together regularly. Each month, the meetings created a space where concerns could be shared and solutions found. Teachers understood the importance of preserving the village's customs, and parents began to appreciate the need for their children to be exposed to new ideas. Jabari felt relieved as he saw his children return home with a greater understanding of both the world beyond their village and the culture they were raised in. His children, once confused and frustrated by the tension between the school and home, now felt supported in both worlds. The lessons at school no longer seemed to conflict with the teachings at home. They learned to respect both traditions and the knowledge that would help them succeed in life outside the village. The community as a whole grew stronger through this collaboration. The sense of unity among the parents and teachers improved, and their shared responsibility for the children's future became a bond that tied them together. They learned that, though change is inevitable, it does not have to come at the cost of their roots. With mutual respect and open conversation, they could adapt to the future without losing the past. The moral of the story is clear: when families and communities come together to address challenges, they can find solutions that benefit everyone. It teaches us that listening to one another, understanding different perspectives, and respecting both tradition and progress can lead to harmony. Jabari's efforts remind us that growth doesn't have to mean forgetting where we come from. We hope you enjoyed Jabari's story and the lessons it brings about community, family, and the importance of understanding one another. What do you think about the way Jabari handled the situation? Have you faced similar challenges in your own community or family? We'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you found this story meaningful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more stories that reflect everyday life and valuable lessons. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to your thoughts and feedback. Until next time.